What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here on the Run Pure Sports channel, MLB Swing for the Fences show. Thursday morning, talking today's 5-game slate, as is often the case on a Thursday. We got a smaller slate of baseball, mostly early games. And, of course, it's getaway day. The team's traveling after this. So, 5 games to talk about. We'll do it game by game as we always do. Probably a little bit shorter of a show. We do have early lock time about, an hour and 9 minutes from now. Joined, as usual, on Thursday mornings. He's yawning over there. He's tired. He's waking up. But he's here breaking it down for us. Sweet Travis Mangone, how you doing on this Thursday morning, Travis?
Yeah, good to be here. All the DraftKings contests sold out, or not all of them, but the main ones. And excited for this slate. Only 5. It's 5 games, right? Yeah, 5 games on the docket today. And there is one late game, but hey, we have NBA playoffs. We get to watch the Knicks hopefully take down the Sixers tonight. So good night overall. It should be a fun time. And I don't mind like the Thursday kind of early baseball games that we get out of the way, just because like the weekend is a grind, right? We got all the sports going on. It's crazy. So it's kind of like a nice little just relaxation going into the weekend.
Yeah, I certainly don't mind doing the show, pretty much every day. Do it early here, watch some baseball, and then, kind of have the rest of the day mostly off. So it's a lot of baseball for me right now. So happy to have a day with at least some fewer games, just because it can kind of feel constant, right? The baseball grind, which is every single day. I haven't been hottest in DFS recently, so yeah, happy to have a little bit of a shorter slate today, but we will do our best, of course, as always, to get to the winner's circle ourselves. Hopefully some of you guys will be there as well when this slate is wrapped and done with. But yeah, without further ado, actually, I do have to ask you one more question. Yesterday, Kevin Fallick, our good friend, Mr. Fallick, was convinced that you were just going to be absolutely flummoxed by people tagging you in the live show chat, but not saying anything, just tagging Mangone for the ticket giveaway. Did that ruin your night as Fallick planned, Mangone?
I didn't even know that happened. So this is the best part. So I'm always on Do Not Disturb on Discord because I hate that noise that it always makes. It like eventually, like one day during COVID, I cracked. I was just like, I can't handle the Discord sound anymore. So I put it on that. But I'm sure there's ways I could fix that and just turn the sound off or other things like that. But I'm seeing now, DC, I have 35 notifications in the live show chat. So
yeah, that's awesome that you didn't even know it was happening. You thought this was like the best giveaway ever. It was actually the worst. And I have banned Kevin Fallick from being in charge of ticket giveaways going forward, at least on my show here on the MLB Swing for the Fences show. All right, let's get into these games. First one to talk about, it is starting an hour before the others, Colorado and Miami. This one in Miami obviously makes a big difference. About a big a park shift as you can have Coors Field to the Miami Stadium. Edward Cabrera pitching for the Miami Marlins. He's been pretty good this year, a little bit shaky in his last start. Definitely a high upside arm, big fastball. It's been inconsistent for sure in his big league career. He's a guy who can get really wild and start walking dudes. But I do think on this particular slate, he's one of the 2 clear top options for me. So, yeah, I'll take the strikeout upside. Obviously, the matchup with the Rockies doesn't really get any better, right, than facing the Rockies on the road, at home, big park, all that stuff for Cabrera. So I do think he's rightfully going to be one of the highest-owned pitchers. Really hard for me to argue against that, honestly. I'm on board with Cabrera, and then Peter Lambert pitching on the other side. More of a kind of a bullpen-ish type of pitcher. Did throw 66 pitches back on the 21st, so maybe he can give you 60 to 70, something like that, but I wouldn't expect him to go deep in this game. It's really not very good anyway. He does have a good matchup against Miami. He is cheap at 5,800 on DraftKings, but not a ton of interest in Lambert here for me, and honestly, even going against him isn't that appealing given the stadium, some of the better spots that we have on this slate. So I'm mostly just on Edward Cabrera. On a 5-game slate, of course, you can't really write off any team or any stacks, but Cabrera by far my favorite player in this game. What about you, Mangone? Marlins and Rockies.
Well, Cabrera's a really, really interesting conversation today, just because like it's a 5-game slate, and when it's a 5-game slate, like I think you really have to start talking about pitching ownership like a lot closer. And like you said, Cabrera can get wild at times.
Yeah.
So like if you told me Cabrera's like 20%, I don't think I'd care. But if you told me he's like 50 or higher, like things get interesting there if you decide to fade him. Not saying you should stack the Rockies, but just like if Cabrera goes out there and let's say he's clean through the first 3 innings, struggles in inning 4 or 5 with some walks, gives up a couple of runs, and he just ends up at like 8 DK points. Well, that's probably not going to be, on the winner. You never know on a 5-gamer, but it's something to think about. On the flip side, let's talk about the Rockies. I actually want to get your take on this, DC. This is like a little just, I don't know, it's kind of hand in the ground take, but you're the Rockies. You were just playing in Mexico City. You've been in Miami for, you've been in Miami for 4 days. Like, are they able to wake up for this one in time? Like, how are they feeling for this game, you think? Because I do feel like it's going to be a tough game to wake up to. And I feel like they've maybe done a little bit of partying in Mexico City and Miami. I don't know. What's your overall take?
It's possible. Team mostly of youngsters. And yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Everything points to Edward Cabrera having a big game. The problem with Cabrera is like his results depend mostly kind of on himself, right? If he can find the strike zone and be efficient or not. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe the sleepy Rockies will just be standing up there taking their walks, and I think that's their best way.
I just say when you're in Mexico City, right? I'm sure they went out and had a good time when they were there. And when you're in Miami, you're a bunch of young kids, maybe haven't been there. Well, I'm just saying it's an interesting thought process. I'm not putting it into my projections or anything like that, but it's just something to, it's one of those fun talking points. Like people like talking about narratives and all those other things. Like, I don't know. It's not nothing in my opinion. They're not robots out there. So, but I did core the Rockies yesterday on that really bad slate. So it's really hard to get up the next day and core the Rockies again, especially when it's not in Coors Field. I'll just say that. I'm not super excited about this Rockies offense. This Rockies offense is not one that I'm looking to target. If I play anything, it's really focusing on Cabrera. And also I'm not that excited about the Marlins too, right? Like if you look at the Marlins, like this offense isn't amazing. Sure, like that 1 through 4 doesn't look bad, but man, it gets ugly after that. So this is also a 7.5 total. Keep in mind when it's the lowest total on the board. Now, I'm not looking to play Peter Lambert. That's not someone I'm racing to play. It's really Cabrera or bust for the most part for this game. But I'm also highly considering kind of just like fading this game and fading the Cabrera side. And maybe not just fade, just go underweight. Just because I think, for me personally, I think it's either Nathan Eovaldi or Cabrera. And for me right now, Eovaldi's the guy that I would rather go to over Cabrera. And then I try and get different with my SP2. That's kind of where I'm at. But you could talk me out of it if we get to Eovaldi. Because, listen, the Nationals, they have been very pesky over the past couple weeks. This is clearly not the same Nationals team. And eventually these bad teams do get good. And it does feel like the Nationals kind of feel like that team, DC. Like, remember the Diamondbacks when they were really good in August, a couple of years ago, August and September. And then next year they were in the playoffs and they're absolutely crushing, right? I could see that a little bit with this Nationals team. Like in August and September, we ride this team out. And then next year they're just like a really good team that makes the playoffs and makes a little bit of a run. That's all I'm saying. If you think about this Nationals team, it's definitely not what it used to be.
That's fair. In terms of talent, though, I mean, they've got CJ Abrams, who I think is definitely a breakout star. Beyond him, I mean, Luis Garcia is kind of coming around. Obviously, Lane Thomas, pretty good hitter. He's on the IL, though.
They have Mackenzie Gore, who's like...
No. I'm just talking about the lineup. I agree. Yeah. Gore is awesome. Yeah. They'll come around for sure. I'm not scared of them today for Eovaldi, and I guess to answer your question, I do trust Eovaldi more than Edward Cabrera. Ownership wise, Sabres got them right neck and neck. They've got Eovaldi, both Cabrera and Eovaldi between 40 and 45% owned as the 2 highest pitchers on the board. If you told me that was true for sure, I would definitely lean Eovaldi wouldn't be surprised to see Eovaldi actually coming higher than Cabrera. I personally like him a little bit more. I think you could argue Cabrera has perhaps a little bit more upside with the strikeouts than Eovaldi does, but I think Eovaldi is way safer, way less likely to self-implode. But to your point, I would much rather face the Rockies than the Nationals overall. And Nationals at least have some life, right? This Rockies team they're pretty dead, obviously, especially away from Coors Field. Even in Coors Field this year, they've been not very good. So, yeah, awesome matchup for Cabrera. We're on the same page there. Let's get to the next game on the slate. I think, for me, the most interesting one from a number of aspects. Carlos Rodon pitching for New York Yankees. I've been out on him this year. He's been much better than I expected, honestly. Actually, the results have been really good. He's got an ERA below 2. I'm still not buying in on Carlos Rodon, but getting a little bit more difficult after he pitches pretty well, pretty much every time out there, including the last 2. He'll go against Kyle Bradish, who will make his first start at the MLB level of the year, was shut down in spring training with a UCL injury, which it looked like the most likely outcome was he was going to get Tommy John to be out for the year. But they decided to rehab. His minor league rehab starts went pretty well. And I think there's a decent chance he looks pretty much like Kyle Bradish did last year, which was a pretty damn good pitcher, honestly. I was pretty high on Kyle Bradish most of last year. I think he got up to 77 pitches. I believe that's right. 77 pitches in this last outing. Had 6 strikeouts over 5 innings. So yeah, he looked good there. Obviously, big jump in competition from AAA to the big leagues, but yeah, I think there's a chance we'll see normal Kyle Bradish. He's interesting at 8,400. I mean, if he threw 77 in his last start, you can hope for 85-ish pitches, which on this slate, it's a short slate. Most of the pitching I don't like really outside of Eovaldi and Cabrera. Again, not an easy matchup with the Yankees, but a lot of these pitchers I don't want to play, including Carlos Rodon, who I'm seeing as the 3rd highest owned pitcher on the slate. I'll be off him again. I'll be going to some of these Orioles bats and burying the lead a little bit. It's 92 degrees apparently at first pitch in Baltimore.
Really? 92 in May? Like in early May? That's crazy.
That's what I thought, but it does appear to, in fact, be the truth. So really scorching day in Baltimore. Makes me nervous for the pitchers. Obviously, warmer weather favors hitters in a big way. So some interest in Bradish, none in Rodon. And then I like really the offenses on both sides, but I'll be trying to pick on Carlos Rodon here with some of those Orioles bats in a warm, very warm day in Baltimore. What about you, man, going Bradish, Rodon, Yankees, and Orioles?
You definitely have me shocked it's 92. Like, that is crazy.
That was my reaction too, but it is.
I can't even believe it. So I was actually interested in both offenses before even finding out it was 92 degrees.
Yeah.
So I have even more interest now because it's not just 92 there, right? It's 92 there and not 92 everywhere else. Like when we get to July, there's like a lot of games where it's just like there's hot weather everywhere. It just doesn't matter. Yeah. But here there's definitely a gap. And I know it's not an amazing ballpark for hitting typically, but I think you just can't ignore this Yankees offense and what they've been doing. I've been riding them out pretty good. I haven't been able to play the Yankees over the past couple days because they've been on that weird slate, I think. So haven't really been able to roster them that much as they've been on the 635 slate or whatever it's called. But I'm willing to get back on, especially with a guy like Kyle Bradish. I know you talked about how he's really good and everything, DC, but there's definitely a chance first start back, number one. Well, he can easily only go 4 innings. Let's say he has 1 inning where he walks a couple guys and it's just a longer inning. They could have a shorter leash. Also, it's not guaranteed that he comes back from injury and he's fine. You talked about how he just, could have been out for the year. And I'm just saying he could not have his stuff perfectly back. That's all. And honestly, there's a chance the Yankees offense just dialed in. There's just a lot of outs, I think, where this Yankees offense can get the job done. So I want to be on this Yankees offense here. I love Juan Soto. He'll probably be my favorite play here on this Yankees team. And honestly, the thing I like a lot about it is they have a lot of value throughout their lineup. Verdugo, who's been hitting well, 3.4K in the 6-hole. Cabrera, 3.9. He's pretty good play. You got Wells, 3K as a cheap catcher. Trent Grisham, 2.6. So a lot of options here on this Yankees team. I'm definitely going to have exposure to them. I also want to look at this Baltimore team. The lineup is out. They're going against Rodon. Rodon is definitely someone I want to attack. And we've talked about this Baltimore team. And how 1 through 9, you can just pretty much play anyone. And again, there's value up and down throughout the lineup. If you need to punt your catcher position, you got James McCann there at 2.6. You got McKenna at 2K. So you do have values to help make things work if you need to. Or you can easily punt one of your pitchers to help yourself to go up and grab a lot of these big bats. So overall, this is probably the game of the slate, I would say, for me. I think there's a couple other spots I'll like, but I definitely want to be looking at Baltimore and the Yankees. It's probably going to be hard to game stack it, but I definitely want to get exposure to this game for sure.
Yeah, 100% with you. Like both sides. The bats are pretty expensive for Baltimore. They do have some cheaper guys at the bottom of the lineup, but those guys are, McKenna, not very good hitters, 1, and 2, very much likely to be pinch hit for. I would throw Mateo in that group as well. So, yeah. But I mean, all those righties, Rushman, Mountcastle, Santander, Westberg, and then, of course, even lefty. Gunner's been amazing this year. So I'm with you on Baltimore. I like the Yankees call as well. And I think I'm just going to fade the pitchers here. I think you make good points on Bradish. And looking like if he was going to be super low owned, right, if people were like, no way I'm playing him first start or whatever, then maybe I would jump on board. But I'm seeing around 20% ownership. To me, I would rather just play Cabrera or Eovaldi. I know double the ownership. I know they're more expensive, but just feel better about those guys. With the matchup, with the weather, with the track record, with not coming off injury, I think, to me, eating the ownership on Cabrera and Eovaldi is going to be the way I go, at least on my main team today. So no guarantees, obviously, but I do think that's the odds-on play on this slate. Let's get to the next game we have. Pulling it up here. We will go with Cubs and Mets up next. Not quite 92 degrees in New York, but 78, 80, something like that. Winds blowing straight out, 10-mile-per-hour winds to center field. So this park, too, will play more hitter-friendly than it typically does, and more hitter-friendly than it has throughout the year. I think this is the best weather day in Baltimore, New York, and Boston. The 3 outdoor games all have their best hitting weather of the young season. 2 mediocre arms going here. Adrian Hauser, I actually think calling him mediocre is probably giving him too much credit. And then the youngster Ben Brown pitching for the Cubs. Haven't been super impressed with him so far this year. So this is another one where give me the bats here. I think you can really go to most of these hitters on either side. I do slightly prefer the Cubs side just because we know for sure Hauser is not good, whereas Brown, a young pitcher, there's some talent there that maybe is yet to be unearthed. So I like the Cubs side especially, but not by any means fading the Mets side either. And I'm going to pass on both of these pitchers. What about you, Travis? Cubs and Mets?
Yes, definitely passing on both of these pitchers. I think there's a couple of pitchers, or at least one pitcher coming up that we can discuss that I'll.
I'm surprised this total is so low, sitting at 8 with Hauser, Brown, and good hitting weather.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that too. I also think Hauser's really bad. Like, I just don't see how we don't like the Cubs here. I think they're a really good play. I definitely want to be on them. You also have the Mets too, where like this Mets team can't get completely ignored. I just want to see if we have the lineups because early games you sometimes don't get great lineups.
We have it. Everyone's in there pretty much outside of Lindor, who's sick with the flu or something like that.
Yeah, I will say though, DJ Stewart, I know he was in the 4-hole, but seeing him in the 3-hole, just man, that lineup drops off so quick. Like, because Alvarez has obviously been out for a while. You got Narvaez in there. I mean, it's a similar Mets lineup, but it's a little different because no Lindor. These lineups are not the greatest, but I do think you can't ignore them for sure on this slate. It's probably part of the reason why, DC. Like the lineups are just really gross. From even the Cubs lineup isn't amazing. That one kind of drops off a little bit, but yeah, overall, I think you have to like this game. I think the next game coming up that we're probably going to discuss, I think a lot of people are going to like at least one or two of the offenses there. Where I think you can make the argument that this Mets Cubs game could get a little bit overlooked, right? If you're just kind of talking ownership, I think ownership wise, this game could be overlooked where you want to get exposure to some of these bats. Maybe it's through a Mets mini stack where you play like a Pete Alonso as a one-off, or you play DJ Stewart in there as a value who's in the 3-hole. Getting exposure to this game, I think, is definitely important. And maybe it's through mini stacks, or maybe it's through 5-mans. But I just think this game is one that it's not the top offense of the day, but the ownership is going to be down enough where I think you want to make sure you're getting exposure to it.
Totally. Like I said, I do like the Cubs side a little bit better. Sounds like you're on the same page, but yeah, I'm not ignoring the Mets, especially that top 4. Like, I'm not super excited to play McNeil or Brett Beatty or Bader, but those guys are cheap. They do have some talent. So yeah, I really do think both sides of this game look good. Michael Busch in particular looks like a pretty awesome play from the Cubs side of the ball. All right, we'll keep it moving to the next game on the slate, San Francisco and the Boston Red Sox. Again, not as warm as Baltimore is, certainly, but still a nice hitting day in Fenway. Should be around 70 degrees at game time. Winds blowing out to center field. This will play like a hitter's park today. I haven't seen that often this season in Fenway. Obviously, a lot of cold April weather in Boston. On the mound, yeah, 9.5 total. So by far the highest total of the day is in this game. I guess the Yankees and Orioles are close, but 9.5 in Boston for Red Sox Giants. Josh Winkowski pitching for Boston Red Sox. He's really not any good pitcher to target for sure. Do like this Giants stack to some degree. And then Kyle Harrison, who is a good strikeout arm. I do think he's got some strikeout upside in this matchup, but I also think he could give up some bombs here. He is a fly ball pitcher, attacks the top of the zone with his fastball. It's kind of his primary mode of pitching. And, Red Sox have some guys who can do some damage, namely Tyler O'Neill, who's just off to a massive start, up to 5,900, but has been worth every penny. And I do think this matchup fits him perfectly. I do like some of the cheap guys at the back end of the Boston lineup. Cooper, Dahlbeck, Rafaela are all super cheap. So I'm in on the offenses here, Mangone. No interest in a tiny bit of interest in Harrison, but definitely prefer the offensive side of the ball, especially on the Giants side here. What about you, Red Sox and Giants?
Yeah, I definitely like both these offenses, but I don't want to ignore Kyle Harrison. He's a lefty, right? I'm pretty sure. He's got to forget. Yep. And the Red Sox, they've struggled against lefties, right? I believe that. Has the number changed? I know sometimes the numbers move around. Have you noticed anything different with those numbers, DC?
No, they're going to have high strikeout rates against lefties, I think, all year.
Okay, cool. So that's why I definitely don't want to ignore Kyle Harrison. I'm debating making him like one of like the core pitchers for me, just because I talked about it. Like Evaldi and Cabrera are great. Maybe I'll play both of them together. I know they're going to be a very high-owned combination together. I'd see, how easy it is to make it with teams. But I just think Kyle Harrison for 8,200, it's just a really nice play. I understand that the Boston Red Sox, they are not a team that I always want to target, but I do want to with lefties. And we talk about this on almost every slate. There are spots where you can play both sides. I think this is one of those spots on the slate where you can play the pitcher, you can play the bat. That's going to happen pretty much every single slate. There's going to be at least one of those spots. That feels like the spot on this slate. So yeah, if you look at the lineups too, lineups are not bad. You got value up and down throughout the lineup, spends that you can get to as well. It is worth mentioning whenever the Boston Red Sox, it feels like the past 4 years, Rob Refsnyder randomly starts to make the top of the lineup. Well, he's in the top of the lineup today. He's in the 4-hole. That always feels like when the Boston Red Sox lineup starts to, fall a little bit and get worse. I don't know. It just feels like every single year it's like that. And then this Giants side, I do think people should not be ignoring the Giants here. Jorge Soler, Wilmer Flores, and I believe with the manager change, you can correct me if I'm wrong, DC, but you don't have to worry about the pinch hit risk as much with the Giants anymore. Has that been correct throughout the season?
Yeah, definitely true. There's still some for the lefties here, but not nearly the problem it was with Gabe Kapler managing.
Yep, and as Steven says, wind's blowing out in Boston, which obviously is a good thing as well. So you got to like this game. I think it's a good one. But I am highly considering the Kyle Harrison thing just because I do think people are going to load up on this game. I believe this is the chalk of the slate. And one argument you can make on 5-game slates is, well, when there's only 5 games, if one offense gains so much ownership and you get the opportunity to take a pitcher that may be lower owned because of that, just the leverage is too good. Like if you have a pitcher that's like 20% owned, but you have a pitcher that's 5% owned, but that 20% pitcher is going up against the highest owned offense somehow, there's so much leverage there that you cannot ignore that. So I just think that's something that I'm kind of factoring in on this slate. And if you look at this Boston Red Sox offense, sure, it's going to have ownership, but it's not like it's the only offense on the slate. There's a lot of other spots I feel comfortable going to where it makes it easier to play Harrison, in my opinion. So overall, I think I'm higher on Harrison than you are, but I think this is one of the best games on the slate. But honestly, if you look at that Baltimore game, you could argue that should be the game of the slate, right? I think ownership-wise, that's not going to reflect it. I don't know if you agree on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the ownership on the stacks. I'm with you on Harrison. He is my SP3, at least in terms of upside. I do think he's got the third most upside behind Cabrera and Eovaldi. I do think he has more blow-up risk than maybe like a Bradish does, but yeah, I get it with Harrison. I do really like the Red Sox side as well. Again, Harrison is like the epitome of play both sides because he's got the strikeout upside, but he's also got he's going to have home run issues given his fly ball tendencies. And this is not a good park today to have, to be if he's giving up a bunch of fly balls with the wind blowing out in Boston, all these right-handed bats. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see the Red Sox hit a couple home runs off him. I do think he's going to get some strikeouts though in this matchup, and those are obviously the main thing you're chasing from a DFS perspective is those strikeouts. So
the only counter to what you talking about the blow up risk would be a little bit DC is like, oh, well, there's blow up risk, but the problem is like, dude, if he blows up, I'm screwed anyways, right? Because the Red Sox are so high owned, like it just won't matter. Yeah. Like it's one of those spots where sometimes like people will look at like playing a pitcher, and sometimes it's like I'm trying to think of how I'm not wording it correctly, but ownership wise, you're playing Harrison for the leverage, right? That's the main reason. So if he blows up, it just doesn't matter because you're absolutely screwed. Like it just because all those other teams are going to climb to the top of the leaderboard. You're going to go down. It just doesn't matter. So you're kind of just playing the ownership game mainly there and trying to hope the leverage works out.
Yeah. And honestly, to even take your point further, like the blow up risk doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't matter that much if a pitcher gets 8 fantasy points or -8, like you're kind of screwed either way. So I do think that gets a little overplayed when we're talking about, which pitchers we want to roster. But let's get to the last game of the slate, cruising right along here. We'll of course do all the normal fun stuff we do to end the show, get out of here a few minutes early before this early MLB start. But we got to talk about the last game first, Washington Nationals and the Texas Rangers. This one in Texas should be the roof closed here. Mitchell Parker will pitch for the Nationals. He's been a good story for them. No question about it early on here. Even after a little bump in the road against Miami where he wasn't great, still the overall numbers on the season have been fantastic, including 2 very good outings prior to his last one against the Dodgers and Houston, no less. Of course, it's against Miami that he struggles. That's baseball for you, right? He just the inverse of what you would think, or the opposite performances based on the matchups. But yeah, he gets the Rangers here. Pretty tough matchup. There is strikeouts to be had. Obviously, a lot of power too in that Rangers lineup. I haven't seen that lineup. I don't think it's out yet, This game doesn't start till 2:35 Eastern time, so could be a little bit before we get this one. Still, 3-4 hours away from first pitch, maybe 3 hours away. Anyway, I think Parker would be fourth on the list for me, fourth or fifth behind Eovaldi, Cabrera, Harrison, and then it's close for me between Parker and Bradish. I'm just not playing Carlos Rodon today myself. And then Eovaldi, we've talked a bunch about him already. He is my SP1, sounds like your SP1 on the day as well. I do think he's the safest guy and similar upside to Cabrera, maybe not quite as much. I'm not on these Nationals bats much. CJ Abrams, though, is one of those guys that I think you want to include most days if you're playing a bunch of lineups with the power speed combination that he brings to the table. I do like these Texas righties, Semien, Garcia, Jonah Heim, Langford, if those guys are all in there. I think those are all pretty strong plays against Mitchell Parker, who I'm still not a huge believer in. But, yeah, he has shown, obviously, some upside. What about you, Van Gogh, Texas and Washington?
Yeah, we did just get the lineup for the Rangers. Typical lineup. So nothing crazy. Semien, Seager, Lowe, Garcia, Heim, Smith, Langford, Duran, Carter. So when you put Carter as your last bat, it's a pretty damn good lineup. So that's one of my worries for sure with this guy. I know I saw you court this past weekend. I saw you court this Parker guy, and I'm pretty sure I played him because of that. And how'd he do? He didn't do great, but I think the thought process was good though against Miami, right? The lefties. So
it was a kind of a rough pitching slate too.
Yeah, I remember it was a bad one, and I was like looking around, and I was like, well, who's this guy I've never heard of? It's probably a young guy coming up, and so man, it's that Texas. I could maybe talk myself into Parker if that Texas lineup wasn't as good, but that lineup is like strong today. Like Carter in the 9-hole.
It's like the best lineup they could roll out there. So I'm probably not going to go to Parker.
To be honest, like I think we should consider Texas now, like even more. I wasn't really considering them, and I don't think they're going to get ownership that much on a 5-gamer. So I don't know. I want to consider Texas a little bit more. It's definitely a better hitting slate than I was thinking it was going to be going into it. So, yeah, I think Parker definitely has to be, or not Parker. The Rangers are definitely in the conversation as a pretty good offense here today as well. So, not going to play Parker. Mainly looking at Eovaldi. I agree with the statement that you made with this Nationals lineup. Like, don't X off someone like Abrams. Just don't go out and X out the Nationals completely. But I'm not, obviously, if you're playing Eovaldi, you're not going to play Eovaldi probably in the same lineup as CJ Abrams. But overall, I'm leaning Eovaldi over Cabrera. I think that $600. I think that $600 forces people's hand in that way too as well. Do you agree on that? Like ownership wise, I think we talked a little bit about that, but I think Eovaldi becomes the chalkiest pitcher on the slate, right?
I would agree. That would be my guess. Again, like I said, Saber actually has Cabrera a little bit higher owned. If I was a betting man, I would bet that gets flipped, but I do think it'll be close between the two.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. I don't really want to play that many Nationals. Like I said, I won't X out them because I think guys like Abrams are good plays and they might have some values that can make things work, but they're not a top offense on the slate at all. So yeah, I think that's it for me though. Not much to talk about with this game. Definitely don't ignore Texas though. I think Texas is sneaky. The more I think about it, like I just think they're not going to be owned, and they're the Texas Rangers with one of their best lineups.
Yeah, fair points there. Let's do favorite stack, favorite contrarian stack. Then we'll do pitchers, home run calls, and play of the day. My favorite stack overall, I'll go with the Red Sox with the power against Kyle Harrison. Again, I think Kyle Harrison a reasonable play, but some of these right-handed bats, O'Neill, Cooper, Dahlbeck, Rafaela, near the bottom of the lineup are cheap, and I think have big upside here against Harrison. And then I was actually going to name them as my top stack, but I'll go with the Orioles as my contrarian stack because I do think they're going to go a little bit under the radar. I do think people are going to play Carlos Rodon, and I kind of want to pick on Rodon. I'm seeing, like 5% ownership pretty much across the board for the Orioles. For one of the best lineups in 90-degree day in Baltimore. Sounds good to me. I know they're expensive, but there's some good, decent value bets on this slate as well. So, Red Sox and Orioles for me. What about you, Mango?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Cubs. I just think Adrian Hauser's really, really bad. And listen, the Mets, when it goes bad, it always goes really bad. Also, do you know the guy for Barstool, Frank the Tank? Do you know him?
Mm-mm.
You don't know him? He's like this like notorious Mets fan that he's actually going to be at the game tomorrow, and he
I've
hates
definitely
Adrian.
seen him like, yeah, around, like,
Yeah.
on Twitter,
I,
but
everything runs bad for Tank, so he'll be at the game, and yeah, it's not going to go well for him. So I hate Adrian Hauser too. I think he's really a bad pitcher. And we talk about these Cubs, right? And by August, they're going to be like super expensive and a really good offense. And like I want to be on these Cubs. So I think the Cubs are my overall number one stack of the day. My contrarian stack. I'm not even going to flip to the Rangers. I think you were thinking I was going to say the Rangers after what I said, but I'm going with the Yankees. I know Kyle Bradish is this good pitcher and everything, but I just can't ignore the 90-degree weather, the wind blowing out, and how good this Yankees offense has been to me. And they're going to be kind of contrarian on this slate. I think the three offenses that most people are gravitating towards are the Giants, the Cubs, and the Red Sox. Those feel like the three highest owned offenses of the day where the ownership gets split. And then from there, all the other offenses feel like they're going to be under owned. So that's kind of where I'm at with this slate for hitters.
makes sense to me. We'll do pitchers next. Most important pitcher, pretty simple for me here. It's Nathan Eovaldi. Not playing a ton of lineups today. He'll be on all of them that I do play. My favorite pitcher on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So Nathan Eovaldi, my most important pitcher today. What about you, Mango?
Yeah, since I don't know where I'm going with the Evaldi Cabrera argument, I think it's Kyle Harrison for me, just because I think I'm going to be very overweight on Harrison compared to other people and the field. So Kyle Harrison, like I said, I'll have Red Sox bats. It's not like I'm fading them, but Kyle Harrison will definitely be an important piece for me today because of the stand that I kind of take there. So yeah, that'll be for pitchers for me.
All right. We'll do home run call. I'll go down to the 8th hole for Boston. Mr. Ceddanne Rafaela, I think, gets one against Kyle Harrison. Your home run call today, Mango.
Yeah, my home run call. Let's go with. Now, I want to say, are we doing the overall? Are we doing also the overall best play of the slate? Because I don't want to get my home run call with my overall best play.
Yes, we are. Yep, two different players.
All right, yeah. So I don't want to mess that up. So home run call. Let's go with Christopher Morel. Little power there from him on the Cubs.
Love it. And go ahead with your best play on the slate.
Yeah, best play is going to be Mr. Juan Soto. I'll be spending the money on him. He'll be slamming one off Kyle Bradish. So Juan Soto will be my overall play.
All right. And my number one play on the day, Mr. Tyler O'Neill for the Boston Red Sox. Just on fire right now in a perfect matchup and weather for him in Fenway. That'll do it for this show. We will be back, of course, at the normal time tomorrow with some Friday night fireworks. I believe me, Boynton, and someone else is filling in for stats tomorrow. Maybe third song. Not quite sure, but should be a fun show tomorrow. We do appreciate you guys watching as always. Hit the like button on your way out if you haven't yet done so. And if you do want to join us at Run Pure Sports, you can use the promo code DC15 for 15% off your first weekly or monthly payment. We'll get out of here, finish those lineups, hopefully see some RPS logos at the top of the leaderboards. Good luck to everybody, including you, Mangone. For Mangone, I'm DC, and we are out of here.